we are going to take the module 3 of the personal leadership journey that we've been taking together since the first week of April. And in this module 3, we are going to look at a complete analysis of our case study on leadership in a time of change. We already did a kind of review analysis of that case study, but we specifically used John P. Cotter change process approach. But this time around, we want to do a complete analysis of what really transpired within this organization. And I believe that today's lesson is really going to be very inspiring and very educative. So I want you to pay a very good attention, because today's lesson is really going to open up a lot of ideas for you as you look forward to becoming a leader of some great organization in the nearest future. Now, I believe we've all gone through the material that was sent to us earlier on, and I believe we've done justice to the material. Reading the material in depth to really get the basic information that we are going to use in analyzing this case study. We talking about the description of the site. I believe you will have the details. If you have read the material, you have the details of the description of the site in the material given to us. Then we move to what we need to do when we're in crisis. When we're in crisis, what exactly do we need to do? Some people, when they are in crisis, the first thing that happens to them is that they begin to panic. They go into a panic mode, and everything becomes disrupted. They are not able to coordinate themselves. They are not able to organize the setting in a way that it will bring results or productive outcome to the organization. So what do we do when we are in crisis? Now, according to one of the book which I recommended, which I also provided a review of in this School of Transformational Leadership, when we are in crisis, I think the first thing that we need to do is that we need to face the reality. You see, reality is something that many people are not willing or are not bold enough to confront. But when you are in crisis, the first thing to do is not to go into a panic mode, but to really face the reality. We need to face the reality that is confronting us in the face. And in this sense, there is need for us to build an urgency to make a deep change, to make a deep change, just like Robert Quinn proposed in his book, Deep Change. So we need to tell ourselves the truth and face the reality, and then make an urgent decision to make a deep change. When we're in crisis, it is a time to take decisive action. So at this point in time, we need to leave our comfort zone and then step out of our familiar terrain and then do things that people might think they are stupid sometimes, or they might even think they are weird. We need to take such drastic action if there is any hope of our organization getting out of the crisis that we are confronted with. So when we are in crisis, I said we need to face reality. Now, in the case of worker center ecumenical exchange, when this organization, if you gone through the material, when they were in crisis, they knew there was a real problem because the organization was changing from, because of the rapid change that we are witnessing and that we still continue to witness in our world today. They realized that the mission for which the organization was set up in the first place, they were no longer meeting that, they were no longer fulfilling that mission again, because the house, the entire campus where the organization is located is used to house the children of missionaries that are sent abroad to go on missionary work. But because people don't no longer see the need to become missionaries, not talking about American situation now, people do not see the need to go abroad to do missionaries, because the countries they are going to do missionary, the people, the indigenous people there are already taking up the challenge of preaching the gospel to their people by themselves. So there was no need to continue to send missionary abroad again. And the purpose for which the worker center was set up began to lose, they began to fail to meet the purpose for which it was established. So the first thing that the board of trustees did, or the first thing that they did in the organization when they discover that they were not meeting they were not fulfilling their mission, was to make their first strategic move. You see, when you are in crisis, when you are in trouble, it's calling for a strategic decision. You need to chart a strategic direction for your organization when you are in deep crisis. So the first strategic move that Worker Center did was that they appointed a new president, because obviously the people that were running the organization in the past could no longer see any way forward for the organization. So they appointed a new president. And what did she do? She initiated the name changing from Walker Missionary Homes Incorporated to Walker Center for Ecumenical Exchange. So you can see how they moved from the name they were bearing before to a new name that they now bears. So they moved from Walker Missionary Homes Incorporated to Walker Center for Ecumenical Exchange. So that was the first strategic move they did. So when they changed to Walker Center Ecumenical Exchange, they had a grand plan or a grand purpose to transform the organization from a Christian-based mission to interfaith-based organization. And this is what William Bridges called managing transition. They knew that they needed to transition from where they were to a new place where they should be. And that calls for a strategic move. And the strategic move that they had to do at that point in time was to, first of all, appoint a new president who will see things differently, who will have a fresh idea, fresh perspective of where the organization should possibly go. And then the idea of changing the name of the organization is so that they can open up the organization to have other purposes that they can fulfill. So they moved from a Christian-based mission to an interfaith-based organization. And that is why the name Ecumenical Exchange came into their name. Now, When an organization is in crisis, we said the first thing that those who are at the helm of affair of the organization needs to do is to face reality. And one of the things you need to do when you are facing reality is to do a proper diagnosis of what is actually going wrong or what has actually gone wrong. That is part of facing reality. You need to uncover what is going on within the organization. Now, for Worker Center Ecumenical Exchange, they recognize that the diagnosis, the problem they are facing was that there was a lack of recognition of the dynamics of the modern society. Now, the lack of recognition for these dynamics of the modern society, because the society was moving at a very rapid pace and the organization could not keep up with that rapidity of changes that we are witnessing within the society. And because of that, the organization began to experience some problem, and that was what was responsible for their failure in the first place. So the lack of recognition of the dynamics of the modern society. So that was the problem that the organization was facing. So what did they do to facilitate the change process? Now, basically, there were three major actions that they took. One, I don't think the first one produced any result. The second one produced a minimal result, but the third one was what really eventually produced some results that stabilized the organization for a time. I said for a time because eventually, after I did this research in this organization, they survived for some years, and unfortunately for the organization, when the COVID hit in 2020, because they could not have customers to come and use the space for a long time, and they needed the money of the customer to be able to maintain the facilities, because there was no money coming in from anywhere. The organization has to eventually close down. As I'm speaking now, Worker Center for Ecumenical Exchange is dead, as it were. But that was expected, but probably maybe they could have survived if the COVID had not had a major impact on them. But because of the effect of the COVID, they could not cope with the expenses that were being incurred on a daily basis on the property. So the organization has to go out of business. But these were the steps that they took to at least address the situation from the problem that they discover for why the organization was going through some crisis. Now, the first thing they did was to appoint a leader, which I will call a leader A. And the function of that leader was to oversee, he was appointed like a CEO, to oversee the operation of the organization. And that leader was appointed between 2009 to 2011. That's probably for 3 years. At this point, the situation had escalated into a chaotic one, which John Schreras steps in the process of change identified So they were already in a chaotic situation. So, and because there was chaos everywhere, they needed to uh, stop the chaos from cutting short the life of the organization. So they appointed a leader A. So because they needed to reorganize at the highest level, or they will face extinction. So that was the purpose why they appointed leader A. But unfortunately, leader A could not cope with the rigor of the task on ground. Probably maybe she was not well suited for the job that she was being given to. She was completely overwhelmed due to lack of experience. Possibly because I didn't have the opportunity to interview her in person. It was one of the workers that I interviewed that was telling me this. She was completely overwhelmed due to lack of experience. Probably maybe she has never taken any job elsewhere before coming into this job. So she did not possess any leadership experience to steer the organization to where they can really have some level of safety. Another thing that happened to leader A was that she was a procrastinator. She began to procrastinate regular maintenance decisions. Probably maybe they needed to change some pipes, they needed to do some plumbing work, they needed to do some fixing of windows, those little things that you would normally do in a house. She kept on procrastinating the maintenance of those things, and until those things began to pile up and pile up, and until she was completely overwhelmed. So when the board of trustees discovered that leader A was no longer effective, they had to relieve her of the job and went for another leader, which I will call leader B. And leader B overseeing the organization, the Worker Center for Ecumenical Exchange, between 2011 to 2015. That's probably for about 4 years. Now, at this point in time, this leader is inheriting a lot of difficult financial situation because leader A obviously did not make any progress. She made the organization to go from fire to fry pan. So there was no breakthrough of any sort under leader A. So that was what leader B inherited. But however, leader B was able to possess a good marketing background, or she had a good marketing background, which she used to help build a good customer database for the organization. And that was a major plus for the organization, because it was that database that she built that the leader, who I'm going to talk about later, that was what they built on to be able to sustain the organization from that to 2015 to 2020, before the organization eventually went out of business. Now, but the problem of leader B are what I'm going to mention now. These are some of our weaknesses. She lacked leadership and management skills. Sometimes you may have some good abilities, but if you don't know how to coordinate people, you don't know how to manage people, you don't know how to delegate responsibility, these things can really work against a leader if you are not skilled in doing these things. Now, another problem with leader B was that she was focusing too much on the kitchen because she loves to cook. Because the worker center was operating more like an hospitality outfit. So rather than focusing on 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 the future of the organization, she was focusing more on the day-to-day activities of the organization. So she was more focused in the kitchen, and because she loves to cook, so that was where she was spending most of her time. So, and then, unfortunately for this leader B, she also possessed what I call, uh, she was doing routine maintenance herself, all in the name of saving costs. And this is what I call penny wise but pound foolish. She was trying to save a penny, but at the end of the day, she was losing pound in the name of trying to save a penny. So she was penny wise but pound foolish because she was trying to do maintenance herself because she believes she was going to save money by doing that. Another problem with leader B was that because she took so much upon herself, she burned out eventually. She was completely overrun and experienced emotional burnout. So she had no choice. She was not sacked. I think she was sacked, but she was already overwhelmed, and she was completely uh, overused. You know, because she could not cope with the rigor of the organization again, and then the organization had no choice but to relieve her of her work. Now we are trying to see how you will be. We are trying to see how an organization is behaving in a time of crisis, so that when you look at this experience, when you find yourself in such a situation, and you are able to remember some of the things that is happening in this case study, you would now understand how it is important to take a better decision and to take it as quickly as possible so that you don't continue to damage the survivor of your organization. Now, this is what I call identifying the strategy that produced the required outcome. Now, look at it. Leader A spent about 3 years. Leader B spent about 4 years, making 7 years. So for 7 years, they were still trying to figure out how to put the organization together. But fortunately for them, they had their eureka moment. This is what I call the miracle or the eureka moment for the board of trustees. And what was the miracle or the eureka moment? The board of trustees decided to try a new and a different strategy. And what was the strategy? They decided to opt for a couple leader. And a couple leader, by couple leader, I mean they decided to hire a husband and a wife together so that they can both uh, act as a co-executive director to run the organization. So both of I will refer to this couple leader as leader C plus D, and they were in the organization from July 2015 to 2019. That was how long the leaders were there. But let me also say that these leaders were not also responsible for the death of the organization. They had left before the organization ran into that problem. So they had left. So the board decided to give them the title, the co-executive director. Now, what are the strengths of these leaders, or these couple leaders, or leader C and D, as I call them? Number one, they were more proactive. If you have read the material, you will see some of the urgent action that they took to really save the day for the organization. They possessed unique leadership and management skill. That's another strength that they have. Number three, they literally implemented Kota's 8-stage change process, which for me, I don't think they really learned it from Kota's book. But what really amazed me was how their leadership philosophy perfectly resonates with the 8-stage process postulated by John Kotter. Number four, they understood the power of delegation. This was where leader A and leader B were largely failing. This was the area they were failing. They didn't know how to delegate responsibility to some of their workers sometimes. Number five, they understood the power of division of labor. They were able to match the work in the organization with the talent at their disposals. Number six, they understood how to match talent with work and responsibility. Number seven, they developed a standard operational policies for the organization which was non-existent before. They standardize everything. Before then, there was no standard procedure for people to go on leave, to go on vacation. All those things you will find in a proper organization. There was non-existence of such standard operational procedures. But when these two leaders came into place, they established those operational policies. Now, number 8 or number 9, they built harmonious team spirit among their employees. They ensured that people were able to work together. They were able to do things together. So they ensure the harmonious team spirit among their employees. And last but not the least, they also related well with the board. Unlike during the dispensation of leader B, she really had it rough with the board and won the sympathy of many of the workers. Leader B did not have it. Leader A did not even have any favor in the sight of the board. But leader B, because some of the workers felt she did so much for the organization by at least building a customer base for the organization, the workers were more in solidarity with leader B. But still, it was not having it good with the board of trustees. Now, so what are the avoidable future pitfalls for Worker Center Ecumenical Exchange? Now, these are the things I proposed. I think I did this research in 2017. Yes, I did this research in 2017. So these were the things I proposed for them at that time, and as at the time I was doing this research, I remember I told them that they needed a workable blueprint or vision statement. But unfortunately, if you read the material, you will see some of the workers confused and confessing that they are not so much cleared about what purpose the Worker Center Ecumenical Center and Worker Center for Ecumenical Exchange is trying to fulfill. They don't know what they are trying to fulfill. And that was one of the recommendations I made for them. I said they needed a workable blueprint or vision statement. Number 2 was that they needed a spiritual practice or spiritual discernment, because I discovered that they were not so organized in this area. Because as an organization that is mission focused or that is faith based in a way, I believe there should be a spiritual practices or spiritual discernment session that they should be having, whereby this will allow them to be able to look into the future of the organization. But they were not having any of this as at the time I was doing this research. And finally, I also recommended that they needed to be able to manage anxiety in the workplace, because this was one of the concern of one of the people that I interviewed. Because especially when leaders were being changed almost every three to 4 years, so the workers within the organization became agitated. So they needed to be able to put strategy in place that will help workers to manage their anxiety over whether their work will be secured or not. That is all I have for you on the complete analysis of the research that I did in the organization that we have just discussed now. That is Worker Center for Ecumenical Exchange.